At its height, the city of Rome held 1,000,000 people, a number no city on earth would reach again for almost 1,800 years. Its engineers moved whole rivers through the air on arches of stone. Its concrete has outlasted every empire that came after it, and its people, with no engines and no electricity, built lives of such comfort and order that some of their inventions, the apartment block, the shopping street, the heated floor, would have to be invented all over again centuries later by people who had forgotten them. Tonight, you are not going to tour that empire. You are going to spend one slow, peaceful day inside a single Roman house in a quiet provincial town in the deepest calm the ancient world ever knew, and you are going to let that day carry you to sleep. So settle into your bed. Let your shoulders sink. Let your hands rest wherever they are comfortable. There is nothing to remember tonight and nothing to solve. If you drift off before the day is done, that is exactly what this story is for. You wake up in an ancient Roman home. It is dark and it is quiet, and the first thing you understand about this place, before you see a single thing, is that the darkness is soft. You're lying in a small sleeping room, a cubiculum, on a low wooden bed frame strung with leather straps, under a wool blanket, on a mattress stuffed with wool. And the room around you is hardly bigger than the bed, because in a Roman house, a bedroom is not for living in. It is a shell for sleeping, snug and dim and plain. And all the life of the house happens elsewhere, in rooms full of light. The walls, though you cannot see them yet, are painted a deep calm red, the color of dried roses, because Romans paint even the rooms they only close their eyes in. The air smells faintly of olive oil from the little clay lamp that burned itself out on the shelf sometime in the night, and under that, of stone and clean wool, and somewhere far back in the house, of yesterday's bread. And it is quiet in a way your century has forgotten. There is no hum anywhere in the world. No wire carries anything to anyone. The loudest thing in this town at this hour is the fountain in the street, 2 doors down, which has been pouring its rope of water into its stone basin all night, all year, all century, and will still be pouring when you fall asleep tonight. Beneath everything, always that one soft sound. Falling water, the sound of Rome at rest. You do not know what time it is, and neither does anyone else, and this is the first gift this world gives you. There are no minutes here. The Roman day is divided into 12 hours of daylight, from sunrise to sunset, and 12 hours of night. And here is the beautiful sleepy secret of that system. The hours themselves breathe. In summer, when the days are long, a daylight hour stretches to 75 of your minutes. In winter, it shrinks to 45. Time in this world is not a grid laid over life. It is a tide, swelling and easing with the seasons, and no Roman has ever once in his life been 5 minutes late, because there is no such thing as 5 minutes. So lie still in the warm dark. The first hour has not begun. Sunrise itself is the only alarm this town owns, and it is gentle, and it is not here yet. While the sky decides to lighten, let me tell you where you are. This house is a domus, the townhouse of a comfortable Roman family, not senators, not palace people, but solid, prosperous townsfolk. A family that deals in wool and olive oil and owns a little land outside the walls. From the street, you would hardly know the house existed. Roman homes do not perform for the street. The outside is a plain, honest wall, broken only by a single deep doorway and a few small high windows, and on either side of the door, rented out to tenants, a pair of little shops, tabernae, a bronze smith on one side, and a seller of lamps and wicks on the other, so that the house wears the street's business like a coat and keeps its true life folded away inside. Because inside, the house is built around light and water instead of walls and windows. At its heart is the atrium, a tall, gracious hall with a wide rectangular opening in the middle of its roof, open to the sky itself, and directly beneath that opening, set into the floor, a shallow marble-lined pool. The opening is called the compluvium. The pool is called the impluvium, and together they are one of the calmest, cleverest machines ever built into a home, and in a little while, you will stand beside it and watch it think. Beyond the atrium, deeper in, where a corridor breathes out into brightness, lies the garden, the peristyle, a small green courtyard wrapped on all sides by a shaded colonnade with a fountain at its center. A Roman house keeps its garden the way a body keeps its heart, in the middle, protected, working quietly day and night. Every important room in the house, the dining room, the master's study, the best bedrooms, turns its face toward that garden the way plants do. Listen to the house around you now, because it is beginning, very softly, to wake. Somewhere near the back, a door eases open. Bare feet cross a stone floor with the sound of paper being turned. There is the small bronze music of a lamp being lifted, the tick of flint, a breath, another breath. And then, though you cannot see it, you can feel it. Somewhere in the house, a flame is standing up, and the smell of warm olive oil begins to thread its way down the corridor like a ribbon. In the kitchen, the colina, a small room at the back with a raised brick hearth, the household fire has slept all night under its blanket of ash, exactly as fires slept in every century before your own. And the girl who kneels beside it now, coaxing the embers awake with a handful of dry vine twigs and her own steady breath, has done this every morning for years and has never once lost the fire. She is not thinking about it. Her hands know the work by themselves. None of this is remarkable to her. This is simply Tuesday morning, or rather in this world, the day of Mars, Dies Martis, which is the same Tuesday, wearing its original name. And that quiet, unfailing competence, repeated in 100,000 kitchens from Britain to Syria, is the real engine of the empire, not the legions, the hands that never lose the fire. The Romans had a word for the hearth she is kneeling at. They called it the focus. It was the warm center of the house, the point everything else gathered around, and when, many centuries later, people needed a word for the center of attention, the point where everything gathers, they reached back and took the Roman word for the kitchen fire. Whenever you focus on something, you are, in the oldest sense of the word, drawing your chair up to this hearth. And now, plainly, because this house deserves the truth told about it, you should know who she is, the girl at the fire. She is enslaved. So is the doorkeeper beginning to stir in his alcove by the entrance, and the cook, and the boy who will fetch the water. They are, under Roman law, property, members of the household who own nothing, not even themselves, and there is no soft way to say that, and this story will not try to invent one. Rome's peace and Rome's comfort rest in every town and every house like this one, on unfree hands. It is also true that Roman slavery had doors in it that other systems lacked, that freeing a slave was common, that the freed became citizens, that the cook may end her days a free woman with a shop of her own. But that is a door, not a justification. Hold both truths gently, the way this whole journey holds its history, and let the house go on waking, because it does go on, morning after morning, with all its beauty and all its wrongs woven into the same cloth, which is what every human century looks like when you stand inside it. The master of the house rises with the light. Romans are early people. The whole civilization runs on daylight, the way yours runs on electricity, and so daylight is not wasted. He washes his face and hands at a basin, rubs his teeth, and dresses simply, a linen tunic, a belt, and for now, no toga, because the toga, that great white ceremonial cloud of wool, is for public business, and this hour belongs to the house. And the first duty of the day, before bread, before business, is a small, quiet ceremony that happens in every Roman home, from the emperor's palace to a shopkeeper's back room. In the atrium stands a little shrine, shaped like a tiny temple, called the Lararium, and inside it live the painted figures of the Lares, the guardian spirits of this particular household, of this family, of this hearth. The master stands before them in the gray morning light, and the household gathers loosely behind him, and he offers a pinch of spelt grain, a splash of wine, a few words said so many thousands of mornings that they have worn perfectly smooth. Keep this house. Keep the people in it. It lasts a minute, perhaps less. It is not dramatic, and it is not meant to be. It is the day being set gently on its hinges. The Romans did not believe a house was only walls. A house was a small nation with its own gods, its own fire, its own peace to keep, and every morning began by keeping it. Now the shutters are folded back from the high windows, the door is unbarred, and the atrium fills, slowly, with the one thing it was built for. Light. Come and stand in it. The atrium at sunrise is one of the gentlest rooms human beings have ever designed. The light does not come at you from windows. It comes down through the wide opening in the roof in a soft, tall column, and it lands in the pool in the floor, and the pool, having spent the whole night holding perfectly still, takes the morning sky and lays it at your feet. Stand at the edge of the impluvium and look down, and there below you are the last pale stars going out, upside down, in a marble frame. And now, watch the machine think, because this room is a machine, as surely as anything with gears. That opening in the roof is not a skylight that someone forgot to glaze. The whole roof of the atrium tilts inward, all four slopes leaning toward the central opening, so that when rain falls on this house, the house gathers it. Every drop that lands on those tiles is guided down the slopes to the inward edges, where it falls in 4 silver curtains into the pool below. And the pool is not merely a basin. Beneath it, cut into the ground under the floor, is a cistern, a cool stone belly that can hold weeks of water, and the pool feeds it through a quiet throat, and a small stone wellhead beside the pool lets the kitchen draw that water up again, jar by jar, all year. The roof drinks the sky. The floor swallows the roof's drink. The house stores the storm and sips it in the drought. It has no moving parts. It cannot break. It needs no one to remember it or tend it. It simply sits at the center of the home for 200 years, being roof, window, well, fountain, and calendar all at once, and being beautiful the entire time. When it rains here, the family does not close a window against the weather. They gather at the edges of the atrium and watch the rain fall into the middle of their own house in 4 bright ropes, onto the face of its own reflection. And it is, everyone agrees, one of the best things the house does. Around you, the atrium holds the family's public face. The floor is mosaic, thousands of small stone cubes, black and white, laid one at a time into a pattern of waves and knots by a craftsman who worked on his knees for weeks, and whose work will outlast every carpet ever woven. The walls are painted richly, floor to ceiling, garden scenes and architectural fantasies in reds and golds and greens, because Romans, who invented so much, never invented the bare wall. Against one side stands the strongbox, iron-bound, ostentatiously heavy, and near the back, open to the atrium, the tablinum, the master's study where the family records live, and where, in a moment, the day's first business will be done. And by the front door, in his little alcove, the doorkeeper takes up his post. The Romans called the door itself Annua, after Janus, the two-faced god of doorways and beginnings, who looks both ways at once, out at the street and in at the home. Which is, if you think about it, exactly what a door does. From Ianua came Ianitor, the keeper of the door, and that word has walked down 20 centuries into your own buildings, almost unchanged. Every janitor in the world holds a little of the old god's office, and the god of doorways gave his name to something else as well. The doorway of the whole year, the month that looks back at the old year and forward at the new. January is a door standing open in the calendar, and you have walked through it every year of your life without knowing whose it was. Breakfast in this world is a small, standing, unceremonious thing, and it is called ientaculum. The Romans saved their attention for the evening meal. Morning is a piece of yesterday's flatbread, perhaps rubbed with a little olive oil or dipped in watered wine, a few olives, a bit of cheese, a handful of dried figs, eaten in the kitchen doorway or beside the garden in a few unhurried minutes. The bread is good, dense and brown with a crackled crust, and it did not come from this house, because in a Roman town, almost no one bakes at home. The town has bakeries, pistrina, where the miller and the baker are the same busy flour-dusted man, and every morning his boys carry the round, wheel-scored loaves through the streets while they are still warm, and the whole neighborhood smells briefly like the inside of a loaf, and this, too, is one of the morning's reliable kindnesses. Now, take your bread and walk to the front of the house, because there is a sound out there you have been hearing since you woke, and it deserves to be met properly. Step through the deep doorway, past the doorkeeper, out into the narrow street, and there it is, 2 doors down at the corner, the fountain. A plain stone basin, waist-high, with a worn spout shaped like a lion's mouth. And out of the lion's mouth pours a smooth, steady, glassy rope of water, and it does not stop. It has never stopped. There is no tap on it, no handle, no valve, and that is not a flaw. That is the whole design. Roman water does not wait to be asked for. It runs day and night, winter and summer, through the fountain, over the basin's lip, into the gutter, and away down the street, washing the town's stones as it goes, and the town simply lives in the middle of its passing, dipping in a jar whenever a jar needs filling. And the water in that basin has come a very long way to fall 3 feet into it. Somewhere out in the hills, a day's walk or more from this street, a spring rises, and from that spring to this lion's mouth, Roman engineers have built a channel, an aqueduct, that does one thing with a perfection that still stuns the people of your century who go and measure it. It falls. Gently, continuously. Never too fast, or the water would tear the channel apart. Never too slow, or it would pool and sour. Mile after mile, through tunnels cut into hillsides, over valleys on arches of stone, the channel descends at a slope so fine that in places it drops less than the width of your finger over 100 paces. The men who built it had no lasers, no satellites, no telescopes. They had water in a groove, a plumb line, and patience, and with those, they drew a line across a province so precisely that gravity itself could be put on a leash and led into town. That is what you are listening to when you hear the fountain. You are hearing the hills arriving. You are hearing a slope of 1 finger in 100 paces, singing in a lion's mouth at the end of its long walk. Stand there a moment with your bread. A neighbor's girl fills 2 jars and balances them and goes. A dog drinks at the overflow with great seriousness. The water goes on, telling its one long story. The whole empire at bottom is this: bread arriving warm and water arriving forever. Before you go back inside, give the street 5 more minutes, because the street at this hour is the town's kitchen, and it smells like it. On the corner opposite the fountain stands a thermopolium, and a thermopolium is a thing your century reinvented and thought it had invented, a fast food counter. It is a wide, open shop front, with a masonry counter facing the street, and set into the counter's stone top in a row are the round mouths of big clay jars, dolia, sunk to their necks. And out of them, the owner ladles the morning's business. Warm spiced wine, the calda, watered and honeyed, steaming gently in the cool air. Chickpeas, lentils stewed soft. Bread to go with everything. His counter is painted. His prices are small. His regulars lean where regulars have always leaned. And his ladle knocks the rim of the jar with a friendly clay note, over and over, the woodpecker of the Roman morning. And he is not a luxury. He is infrastructure. In the crowded streets of the big cities, most ordinary people live in apartment buildings, insulae, stacked 4 and 5 floors high, and most of those little rooms have no kitchen at all, because a cooking fire in a wooden upper floor is how neighborhoods burn down. So the Roman street eats out, daily, cheaply, standing up, and the thermopolium is where a plasterer, a porter, a shopgirl, a schoolboy get their hot food, morning and noon, for small coins. There are said to be scores of these counters in a town this size, hundreds in a great city. Rome did not just invent the apartment block. It invented, out of necessity, the corner takeaway to feed it. And the two inventions have been standing on the same corners, feeding each other, ever since. A boy goes by with a tray of the baker's loaves on his shoulder, walking with the special ceremonial care of someone carrying warmth. 2 women pause at the counter, cup their hands around the warm cups, and settle into the morning's news. And the news here is the well and the green and the bench of every village you have ever slept through, wearing Roman dress. Whose daughter? Whose ship? Whose vines? The fountain keeps its own counsel behind them. Take one last breath of it, bread and spiced wine and wet stone and morning, and then turn back through the deep doorway, past the two-faced God's threshold, into the cool painted quiet of the house, because the house has its own mornings to show you. Back inside, the house has entered its working morning, and the kitchen is the busiest room in it, because the boy has come back from the market with the day's goods in 2 baskets, and unpacking them is a small geography lesson. Olive oil in a fat clay jar, pressed from trees a few miles away, and this one liquid is half the Roman world by itself. It is the cooking fat, the lamp fuel, the soap, the skin lotion, the medicine base. A Roman house runs on olive oil the way your house runs on electricity, and a good householder watches the level in the big storage jars the way you might watch a fuel gauge. Wine in a smaller jar, rough and purple, always to be cut with water, because drinking it neat is considered barbaric. Lentils and chickpeas, a cabbage, of which Romans are inordinately proud. Eggs, a piece of pork belly, a little cone of salt, and salt is worth pausing over, because it is precious here in a way you have to work to imagine. It is the only way to keep meat and fish from spoiling, the one preservative of the ancient world. And it mattered so much that the Romans' word for a soldier's allowance, his salarium, his salt money, whether or not any soldier was ever literally paid in salt, has come down all the centuries to you as the word salary. Every payday on earth still faintly remembers the salt. And then there is the small sealed flask that the cook handles like treasure, and this is garum. And garum is the taste of Rome. It is a fish sauce made in coastal factories by salting fish and letting the summer sun work on them for months. And described that way, it sounds dreadful, and it is, in fact, delicious. A deep, savory, salty essence that Romans splash into almost everything. The way half the modern world splashes soy sauce or fish sauce into almost everything, because it is very nearly the same discovery, made 2,000 years apart. A few drops make lentils taste rich and cabbage taste interesting, and a good bottle from a famous maker costs real money, and is discussed by Roman food lovers with entirely modern snobbery. While the cook settles her kingdom, think for a moment about the scale of what breakfast means here, because the numbers are their own kind of lullaby. The city of Rome itself, far away down the roads, eats something like 200,000 tons of grain every year, and almost none of it grows nearby. It comes across the sea from Egypt and Africa in a fleet of grain ships that are the largest vessels of the ancient world, and it is stored in warehouses the size of palaces and milled and baked in hundreds of bakeries, and a good part of it is handed out to the citizens at the state's expense, month after month, decade after decade, because Rome long ago decided that its people's bread was too important to leave to chance. 1 million people fed across an ocean forever without an engine anywhere in the system. Wind, water, roads, and arithmetic. When people of your century speak of the Roman genius, they usually mean armies. They should mean this. The bread arrived. For 500 years, the bread arrived. Off the kitchen, behind a plain door, lies the room the household is quietly proudest of. And it is not a beautiful room at all. It is the storeroom, the cella, and it is the house's answer to the oldest question there is. The question every home in every century of this journey has had to answer with its own walls. What happens if the ships are late, if the harvest is thin, if the winter is long? Step in. The air is cool and dim and smells of clay, oil, and dust, the smell of patience itself. Along one wall, half sunk into the earth floor to keep their cool, stand the great oil jars, shoulder high, glazed dark inside, each one holding what a family burns and cooks and washes with for months. Along another, the wine amphorae lean together in their wooden racks, slim and long-necked, each one stoppered and sealed with pitch, and on each seal and shoulder, painted or stamped, its paperwork, whose vineyard, which year, and the year is named the Roman way, not with a number, but with the names of the 2 consuls who held office when the grapes were picked, so that a Roman reaching for an old wine is literally reaching back into the government of a particular autumn, and the great legendary vintages are spoken of by their consuls the way your century speaks of them by their decades. On the shelves, the smaller wealth. Dried figs pressed into rounds, jars of olives in brine, honey sealed, hard cheeses in their nets, chickpeas and lentils in sacks, and spelt for the porridge, and the precious cone of salt wrapped in cloth, and the little flask of garum standing apart like a dignitary. The cook can tell you without counting how many weeks this room holds, the way the medieval wife could feel her loaves against the winter, and the colonial family could number its barrels against the snow. It is the same arithmetic, older than all of them, done here in oil and amphorae instead of flour and salt pork. So many mouths, so many jars, so many weeks between this house and an empty table, and the answer, in a good year in this house, is comfortable, and the comfort is not luck. It is jars counted, sealed, and kept cool in the dark. Close the door gently on it. Rooms like this do their best work undisturbed, holding the future at an even temperature. Spend the late morning wandering the house itself, slowly, because the house rewards slowness. It is, like the colonial farmhouse and the medieval cottage, and every good home before the machine age, a survival engine wearing a beautiful face, and every part of it is an answer to a question. The walls are the question of time, answered. Under their painted skins, they are Roman concrete, and Roman concrete deserves its legend. The builders mixed lime with a special volcanic ash, pozzolana, dug from the ground near Naples, and something in that ash lets the mixture cure into artificial stone, stone that sets even underwater, stone that heals its own hairline cracks over the years as water wakes the unspent chemistry inside it. Your own engineers, with all their instruments, went and studied it, and found seawalls 2,000 years old that are harder today than the day they were poured. Far away in the capital, there is a temple with a poured concrete dome 142 feet across, with a round eye open to the sky at its crown. And it has stood unreinforced, uncracked, through every earthquake and empire since. And it is still, in your own century, the largest dome of its kind on Earth. The recipe was lost when Rome fell, and the world built smaller for 1,000 years, waiting to remember. The floors are the question of beauty underfoot, answered one small stone at a time. The windows are the question of light and weather, answered with folding wooden shutters, and in the best rooms of this rather fortunate house, with something genuinely rare and new, actual panes of glass, small, thick, greenish, full of slow bubbles, like windows made of pond water, precious enough that visitors are quietly steered past them to admire. Most houses make do with shutters alone, and everyone agrees the glass is marvelous and slightly show-offish, which is exactly why it was bought. And notice as you wander what the house does with heat and cold, because it does it with placement instead of power. The kitchen with its fire sits at the back. The summer dining spots face north into shade. The winter rooms face south, drinking the low sun. Thick walls hold the night's cool through the afternoon and the day's warmth into the evening. Nothing hums. Nothing burns except one small hearth and a few lamps. The house is not heated or cooled. The house is aimed. It was aimed once by its architect 80 years ago at the sun and the seasons of this exact street, and it has been quietly hitting that target every day since. In the late morning, the master settles into the tablinum, the open study at the back of the atrium, for the hour of letters, and it is worth sitting quietly in the corner for this, because you are about to watch Romans do the thing they did as naturally as breathing, and better than anyone before them. Write things down. For everyday work, the tool is the wax tablet, and the wax tablet is a small marvel of sensible design. 2 flat leaves of wood, hinged together like a book, each leaf hollowed shallow and filled with a skin of dark beeswax, and you write in the wax with a stylus, a slim rod of bronze or bone, pointed at one end for writing, flattened at the other, and the flat end is the whole genius of the thing. Make a mistake, change your mind, finish with the note, and you simply turn the stylus around and smooth the wax flat again, and the page is new. A Roman schoolboy's sums, a merchant's reckonings, a love note, a shopping list, all of them written and erased and written again on the same few square inches of wax for years. The Romans had a phrase for a tablet scraped completely clean, a tabula rasa, and when, many centuries later, philosophers needed words for a mind with nothing yet written on it, a fresh start, a clean slate, they reached for the schoolroom Latin, and the phrase, like the stylus, still has its 2 working ends. For letters and books, there is the finer tool, papyrus, smooth pale sheets of pressed Egyptian reed, written with a reed pen and ink of soot and gum, and a book in this world is not a block of pages. It is a scroll, a long ribbon of writing rolled around a wooden rod, and you read it with both hands, unrolling with one and rolling up with the other, so that reading is a small continuous handcraft, and your place in the story is literally a place, a spot on the ribbon between your fists. The Roman word for one of these rolls was volumen, the rolled thing, and when books later flattened out into pages, the old word refused to retire. Every volume on every shelf of your century is still, in its name, a scroll, quietly rolled up inside the language. A letter has come today, carried the practical Roman way, by a friend of a friend traveling on business, folded tablets tied with thread, and sealed with a thumbprint of wax. It is from the master's brother, up the coast, and it says what letters between brothers have said forever. The vines look promising. The ship was late, but came. Mother as well, and sends instructions. The master reads it half aloud, smiling at the instructions, and turns his stylus and smooths a fresh page of wax, and begins his answer in the slow, comfortable hand of a man with nothing to hide and nowhere to hurry, while the light from the compluvium moves imperceptibly across the mosaic toward noon. Toward the middle of the day, the sun stands over the compluvium, and the column of light in the atrium drops straight down and stands upright in the pool like a pillar. And in the garden, the sundial's shadow shrinks to almost nothing. The Romans watched that moment carefully. They called the sundial's line for it the merides, the middle of the day, and they divided their whole world of time into what came before it and what came after, antemeridium and postmeridium. And if you have ever in your life written the hour with a small AM or PM after it, you have been keeping Roman time by a Roman sundial in Latin your whole life, and no one ever told you. The midday meal, prandium, is as modest as breakfast. Bread again, cheese, olives, some of yesterday's cold pork, watered wine, eaten lightly and without ceremony, because everyone in this world knows what comes after the middle of the day, and no one intends to be too full for it, because after the 6th hour, the Roman world lies down. It is the most sensible institution the Mediterranean ever agreed on. The day's heat is arriving. The morning's work is done. The evening's pleasures are hours away. And so, from the emperor to the fountain boy, the entire civilization closes its eyes. Shops fold their shutters. The street outside goes quiet, then quieter. The household drifts to couches and shaded benches, and the house itself seems to slow its breathing. The Romans counted their daylight in numbered hours, and this rest belonged to the 6th, the sexta hora, and that word lay down in the languages of the warm countries and never entirely got up again, softening over the centuries into the word siesta. Every siesta ever taken since is the 6th hour of a Roman day still going. So take yours. The master is asleep in the shaded exedra with a book of poetry open on his chest, rising and falling. The cook dozes upright by her cold hearth, with her arms folded, a skill of her profession. The dog has poured himself into the coolest corner of the atrium floor, on the mosaic, which holds the night's chill better than anything else in the house, and dogs have known this about mosaic floors for as long as there have been both. Find a couch in the colonnade at the garden's edge, in the striped shade, where the fountain is. Lie down properly, the way this civilization has perfected lying down. The linen cushion is cool. The light through the colonnade lies across the floor in slow, bright bars. The fountain talks its small, continuous talk, water dropping from a shell into a basin, a sound with no edges at all. And somewhere above the garden, a dove is saying the same 5 soft syllables over and over, unhurried, as if it were being paid by the hour to make the afternoon longer. The empire holds. The bread arrived this morning and will arrive tomorrow. The water is running in the street and will run all night. Nothing anywhere needs you. This hour was set aside for exactly this 2,000 years ago. By people who understood rest so well, they built it into the clock. The afternoon, when the house stirs again, is soft and productive in the Roman way, which is to say, nobody hurries and everything gets done. In the garden, the peristyle earns its keep. It is a small formal world, box hedges trimmed low along the paths, rosemary and bay and myrtle in the beds, a fig tree in the corner whose leaves smell of green honey when the sun is on them, violets in the shade, and along the colonnade wall, painted birds in a painted garden, so that the real garden and the pictured one lean into each other, and the ivy cannot quite tell where its territory ends. The gardener moves through it with shears, unhurried, snipping, considering, snipping, and the small green smell of cut box follows him like a spirit. Under the colonnade, the woman of the house sits with her workbasket. And here is the thread, quite literally, that ties every century of this journey together. She is spinning wool with a distaff and a drop spindle, exactly, precisely, motion for motion, as the colonial goodwife will spin it 1,600 years from now, and the medieval widow 1,100 years from now, the spindle turning, sinking, being wound, turning again. When a Roman family praised a wife on her tombstone, among the great virtues they carved was often one simple phrase, lanum fecit. She worked wool. It meant she kept the house's oldest art, the one older than Rome, older than iron, the art of turning a sheep into a family's clothes with 2 sticks and 10,000 patient hours. From the tablinum comes the mild click of the master counting through the afternoon's accounts, bronze and silver coins in small stacks. The silver in his hand was struck in the capital, in a mint that stood for centuries beside the temple of Juno Moneda, Juno the Warner, and her name rubbed off onto the coins themselves, Moneda, the way names do, and rolled down the centuries, becoming mint and money and mani, so that every coin you have ever touched carries, worn almost smooth, the name of a Roman goddess. He stacks and counts and enters figures on a wax tablet with a bone stylus, and the sums are the modest, satisfying sums of a house in good order, the rent from the 2 shops, the wool sold, the oil laid down. Enough with a margin. The Roman ideal for all the empire's marble was exactly this, a house that owes nothing, stores a little, and sleeps well. And in the later afternoon comes the daily journey that no Roman would dream of skipping, the walk to the baths, because in this world, bathing is not a chore done alone in the morning. It is the social heart of the day, and even a story about staying home must follow it out the door, because the baths are where the whole town goes to be a town. The bathhouse is a few streets away, and you hear it before you see it, a warm, echoing murmur of voices and water pouring on stone. Inside, the light comes down through high windows into steamy air, and the afternoon unfolds through a sequence of rooms that the Romans arranged like a piece of music. First, the warm room, the tepidarium, to let the body arrive. Then, the hot room, the caldarium, all steam and glow, where you sit until the day's dust rises out of you, and an attendant rubs you down with olive oil, and then draws a curved bronze blade called a strigil along your skin, scraping away oil and grime together in one long practiced motion, which sounds alarming and feels wonderful, and is how an entire civilization has got clean without a bar of soap. Then bravely, the cold plunge, the frigidarium, one gasping glorious shock, and out again tingling into a towel, feeling like a new coin. But the true wonder of the building is the one you cannot see, and you can only feel it through the soles of your feet. The floors are warm, not sun-warm, deeply, evenly, deliberately warm, so warm in the hot rooms that bathers wear wooden sandals against them. Because beneath every floor of this building, there is another building, a low hidden space where the entire floor stands lifted on hundreds of short pillars of stacked tiles, and through that dark space flows the breath of a great furnace, hot air and smoke, washing along under the pavement, rising through flues hidden inside the very walls, warming the rooms from below and within, before drifting out at the roofline. The Romans called it the hypocaust, the fire beneath, and it is nothing less than central heating, invented, perfected, installed across an empire from Africa to the north of Britain, and then lost with everything else, so completely that the people of Europe would shiver through 1,000 winters on top of the buried ruins of warm floors, waiting for the idea to come around again. You walk home in the early evening, scraped clean and glowing. through streets filling with the same idea. Everyone drifting homeward, bathed and hungry, past the fountain still telling its story to the gutter. And the low sun lays the shadows of the rooftops across the paving stones in long soft bands. And the swifts are up over the town, riding the day's last warmth in high fast circles, making their thin, happy, faraway sound. And now, the house turns toward its great hour, because the Roman day has been aiming all along at the cena, the evening meal. The one meal that matters, taken in the late afternoon and stretched gently into the dark. The dining room, the triclinium, opens onto the garden, and it is built around an idea your century has entirely lost. The idea that the correct position for a long dinner is lying down. 3 broad couches stand around a low table, each couch wide enough for 3 diners, 9 places in all, and the diners recline on their left sides, propped on cushions, left elbow bearing, right hand free, and it sounds precarious, and is in fact profoundly comfortable, as anyone who has ever eaten grapes on a sofa secretly knows. Tonight there is no banquet, no visiting magistrate, only the family and one old friend, which is, everyone agrees, the best number. The lamps are lit as the light softens, small clay and bronze lamps burning olive oil. Each one no brighter than a candle, set in 2s and 3s about the room, and their light is not like your light. It does not fill the room. It gathers things to it, faces, cups, the near edge of the table, and lets everything else lean away into warm shadow, so that a lamplit Roman room in the evening is a small golden island with the night lapping comfortably at its shores. The meal comes in its unhurried Roman order. Eggs first, always, with olives and salad dressed in oil, and a few drops of the treasured garum. Then the cooked dishes, tonight a chicken stewed with leeks, lentils under coriander, cabbage that the cook has made interesting again. And at the end, fruit, the figs and apples and pears of the season, and honey cake. The Romans had a phrase for the whole arc of a proper dinner, ab ovo, usque, ad mala, from the egg to the apples, from the very beginning to the very end, and they used it the way you use from A to Z. And 20 centuries later, when a storyteller is said to begin ab ovo, from the egg, the dinner table of Rome is still quietly setting the phrase. On the table sits the salt, in its small dish. The salt cellar that even modest Roman families kept in silver if they possibly could, because salt was wealth, and the salt cellar was the household's honor in miniature. The talk moves the way talk moves at every good table in every century. The shops, the neighbors, the price of oil, an old story of the friends that everyone has heard and everyone wants anyway, and no one hurries, because there is nowhere to be, and the lamps have made the room an island, and dinner is the evening's whole employment. Outside, the garden goes blue, then gray, then gives its scent up to the dark. The box and the rosemary suddenly stronger. The way gardens speak up at night. The fountain talks on. A moth comes in to inspect the lamps and is gently waved toward the door. The friend rises at last and is walked to the entrance with a borrowed lantern, and the great door closes behind him with its deep wooden note, and the bar slides across, and the house begins, room by room, to put itself to bed. Night in a Roman town is a genuine night, deep and complete, and the house folds itself into it with the ease of long practice. The lamps go out one by one, each with its small breath and its brief thread of smoke, and the smell of warm oil and wick follows the family down the corridors to bed. The smell that means day's end here, as surely as it has meant it every evening for 500 years. In the kitchen, the cook banks the hearth, drawing the ash up over the coals in the gesture that is by now an old friend of yours. The same burying of the same fire that you have watched in a medieval cottage and a colonial farmhouse, because for all the marble and the aqueducts, Rome too sleeps beside a buried ember, keeping tomorrow warm under the ash. The doorkeeper checks the bar on the great door, twice, because checking twice is the whole art of his profession, and settles into his alcove. Far off, several streets away, you can hear the night watch pass, the vigils, the town's watchmen, whose sandals and low voices do a slow circuit of the sleeping streets, watching above all for the one enemy every ancient town fears more than any army, an untended flame. Their round passes, fades, and the silence closes behind them, like water, and the atrium performs its last and best trick of the day. Walk back to it once more, in the dark, and stand at the edge of the pool. The compluvium, which all day was a well of light, is now a window laid flat on the ceiling of the world, a clean rectangle of deep blue-black, and it is filling with stars. Real stars in ancient numbers, the whole slow wheel of them, and beneath your feet, the impluvium holds their reflection perfectly still, so that the house at midnight contains in its exact center two small framed pieces of the sky, one above, one below, and you between them in the dark, in a home that was deliberately built by someone 4 generations dead to hold the stars in its floor. The fountain in the street runs on. It will not stop tonight, or this year, or this century. Somewhere in the hills, the spring is still giving, and the long stone channel is still falling, a finger's width in 100 paces, and the lion's mouth is still telling the gutter about it, softly to no one, all night long. And listen, one last time, to the house itself sleeping, because a sleeping house is never silent, it is only honest. The doorkeeper in his alcove has begun the slow tidal breathing of a man who checked the bar twice. Somewhere off the kitchen, the dog resettles on the warm stones nearest the banked hearth, with the sigh of a creature whose day has ended correctly. The same sigh his ancestors sighed by medieval fires, and his descendants will sigh by colonial ones. The oldest sound of domestic contentment there is. A roof timber, cooling, makes its small wooden remark, and is answered minutes later by another across the atrium, the house talking quietly to itself in its sleep. The water in the impluvium clicks once, softly, as something invisible touches its surface and goes back to holding the stars. And under everything, from the street, the fountain, the fountain, the fountain, your cubiculum is waiting, dim and red and exactly the size of sleep. The leather straps give gently under the mattress. The wool blanket has kept the shape of the morning. Lie down in the middle of the small warm dark, and here is a last Roman gift to take to bed with you. The Romans, who numbered their busy daylight so carefully, hour by hour, treated the night entirely differently. They did not count it. They named it softly in stages, like the movements of a piece of quiet music, and the names are so gentle they are practically a lullaby by themselves. First comes Vespera, the evening, the lamplighting time which has just ended. Then Prima Fax, the hour of the first torch, when the last walkers are seeing themselves home. Then Concubia Nox, which means simply and officially the time of lying down, the hour when the whole world is getting into bed, which is the hour you are in now. And after it, while you are far away, comes the deepest chamber of the night, and the Romans gave it the most beautiful name any people ever gave to any hour. Nox intempesta, they called it, the timeless night, the hour without time, the stretch of deep dark where the hours themselves stop being counted, where even a civilization of surveyors and accountants agreed that measuring should cease, because nothing in it needs measuring, because everyone is asleep, and sleep does not keep books. And at the far end of the timeless hour waits Gallicinium, the cock-crow, and after it, the soft gray Conticinium, the hush before dawn, and then the light comes down the compluvium again, and the day starts its gentle count at 1. You are lying, in other words, at the doorway of the hour without time, and 2,000 years of nights have passed through it before you, and it has never once failed to lead to morning. And before sleep takes you, walk back through the day one last time, slowly, touching each thing as you pass it and letting it go. The soft darkness before dawn, and the hours that breathe, long in summer, short in winter, and no such thing anywhere as 5 minutes. Let them go. The girl at the hearth who has never once lost the fire, and the little flame standing up, and the word focus lying warm at the center of the house. Let her go. The morning pinch of grain at the lararium, and the household gods keeping their small nation, and the door of Janus with its keeper, looking both ways at once. Let them go. The atrium drinking the sky, the 4 silver ropes of rain it is always quietly ready for, the cistern like a cool stone heart under the floor. Let it go. The fountain and its unstopping rope of water, and the long channel falling out of the hills, a finger's width in 100 paces, and the bread arriving warm through the streets, and the 200,000 tons of grain crossing the sea, forever, without an engine in the world. Let them go. The garum flask handled like treasure, and the salt that hides inside every salary, and the coins wearing the worn smooth name of a goddess. Let them go. The ladle knocking the rim of the jar at the corner counter, and the warm cups cradled in the morning news, and the whole street eating together, standing up, for small coins. Let it go. The cool dark storeroom holding its weeks and its sealed autumns, each amphora signed by the government of its own year. Let it go. The wax smoothed flat by the stylus's patient other end, every mistake forgiven, and the letter from the brother with the vines and the instructions, and the scroll unrolling from hand to hand, the volume that never forgot it, was a ribbon. Let them go. The pillar of noon standing upright in the pool, and the sundial's meridies dividing every AM from every PM you will ever write, and the 6th hour, the sexta hora, lying down across the whole warm world and never entirely getting up, so that every siesta since is still Roman time. Let it go. The dove and its 5 soft syllables, and the spindle turning under the colonnade, sinking, wound, turning, the same motion it will still be making in cottages and farmhouses 1,000 years downstream. Let her go. The warm floors of the baths standing on their hidden forest of little pillars, the fire beneath, the long sweep of the strigil, the gasp of the cold plunge, the walk home glowing under the swifts. Let it go. The lamplit island of the dinner table, from the egg to the apples, the silver salt cellar, the old story everyone wanted anyway, the great door's deep wooden note, and the bar sliding home. Let them go. The buried ember in the kitchen, keeping tomorrow, the watchman's steps fading, the 2 framed pieces of sky, one in the roof, one in the floor, and you standing in the quiet exactly between them. Let it all go. It is all still there. That is what this house does best. It holds. The roof will catch the next rain without being asked. The cistern will keep it. The fountain will run all night, and the hills will not run out. The bread will come warm through the streets in the morning, and the fire is only sleeping, and the stars are moving over the compluvium in their slow, reliable wheel, and not one of these things needs you to watch over it. So your hands can let go of the day, your shoulders can let go of the day, and your thoughts can lie down now too, in the small red room, on the gently giving straps, like the dog on the cool mosaic, finding the exact right spot and settling. The Romans, who measured everything, never measured sleep. It was the 1 hour they let off the leash. The night was simply night, 12 hours of it by their generous accounting, unnumbered and unwatched, and the whole town is inside it now. The baker who will rise first, the gardener, the cook, the master with his poetry, the dog, the dove, all of them breathing slowly in the dark behind one barred door after another. All down the street, all across the town, all across an empire at peace from Britain to the desert. Millions of small rooms full of sleep. And tomorrow will be today again, almost exactly. The fire will be woken with the same breath. The grain will go to the household gods, and the light will come down the compluvium and lie in the pool, and the bread will come warm, and the 6th hour will arrive, and the whole world will lie down in the shade, and the fountain will simply go on, because it never learned how to stop. Nothing is waiting for you there. Nothing is waiting for you anywhere tonight. The lamps are out, the door is barred, the ember is keeping tomorrow, the stars are in the floor. Sleep now, the way this house has slept for 4 generations easily at the center of a watered, bread-fed, well-aimed world, and the fountain runs all night. Good night.